Is your soul completing its final incarnation? How can you tell? Since ancient times humanity has wandered, what awaits us after death? Is life merely a fleeting spark, or does each soul perhaps travel a long path through many incarnations? Edgar Cayce, known as the Sleeping Prophet, asserted that reincarnation is not a punishment, but a great gift. Each life is a new chance, a new lesson, a new step toward development. But what happens when the soul completes its education on earth? Are there any signs that we are living our final incarnation? One of the most powerful sensations that accompanies souls at the end of their earthly cycle is a profound sense of detachment from the material world. You can love life, admire its beauty, build relationships, and yet remain an observer, as if in a beautiful theater, understanding that the stage and costumes are merely temporary decoration. This isn't depression or indifference. It's a quiet realization that true life is much deeper than the daily grind, the pursuit of status or material goods. What seems important to others takes on a completely different meaning for you. Edgar Cayce described this as a cosmic yearning, a remembrance of the soul's true home, which we unconsciously seek throughout our lives. The second important signal is a feeling of deep déjà vu, but not just a fleeting "I've seen this before." Rather vivid, often prophetic moments when you know exactly what will happen next. You may intuitively recognize places, people, or events you haven't encountered in this life. These moments are piercings through the veil of time, when your other incarnations momentarily intersect with the present. According to Cayce, when the soul completes its earthly cycle, space and time begin to lose their rigid boundaries. The third sign is a shift in your attitude toward death. Where others experience fear or anxiety, you feel peace. Death ceases to be an end. It becomes a transition to another state of being. When Edgar Cayce entered trance states, he shared that souls approaching liberation from reincarnation carry within them the memory of previous transitions. Death for them is no longer a dramatic catastrophe, but a natural process, like the change from day to night. And finally, another important feature is the increased synchronicity in life. Strange coincidences that cannot be explained logically begin to occur constantly. You think of someone, and then they call. You ask a question, and an hour later you stumble upon the answer in a book or video. Cayce believed that, as the soul approaches the end of its earthly journey, it begins to see that reality is not something external and unchanging. We don't simply live in the world, we interact with it, creating reality with our thoughts and intentions. Hence the soul's whisper. Are we ready to complete the circle? Another characteristic sign of completing a cycle of incarnations is a change in attitude toward desires. If the soul previously craved success, recognition, and love, now a quiet fulfillment arises. This isn't indifference or apathy. It's a natural understanding. Everything you truly need is already within. External goals no longer dictate the path. Instead, an inner peace is born. You may have noticed that ambitions haven't disappeared completely, but they no longer carry anxious energy. You act not to gain something or prove something to the world. Your actions are an expression of the joy of being, not an attempt to fill an inner emptiness. Cayce called this state the dissolution of karmic bonds. Karma is not punishment, but the result of desires and fears that draw the soul again and again into new incarnations. And when desires naturally fade, the soul finds freedom. Another sign is a shift in the perception of reality itself. The material world, which once seemed solid, now appears as a fragile veil. You sense that something greater lies behind the solid forms of objects, bodies, and events. This is not theoretical knowledge, but lived experience. Reality seems fleeting, like a dream, and true existence seems to lie somewhere beyond ordinary perception. Interestingly, modern scientific hypotheses, in particular the theory of the holographic universe, confirm that the world may be merely a reflection of deeper levels of reality. Those approaching the end of their cycle begin to perceive this not as an abstract idea, but as an everyday reality. At certain moments, the world dissolves into light. Objects become streams of energy, and the boundary between I and others disappears. The next important manifestation is the awareness of oneself beyond the personal. Your name, your role in society, even your personal history begin to feel like a mask, not false, but simply temporary. You understand that the true self is much deeper than any definitions. During his sessions, Edgar Cayce called this the attainment of superconsciousness, a state in which the personal identity ceases to be perceived as the ultimate truth about oneself. Here, the need to be someone or prove anything disappears. You simply are, and that is enough. With this vision comes another dimension, deep empathy for all living beings. You feel the pain, joy, and fears of others as if they were part of you. This isn't sentimentality. It's a profound knowledge that all beings are reflections of a single light, a single breath. This empathy naturally transforms into compassion, selfless help, and care. Cayce believed that true completion of the cycle of incarnations is impossible without dissolving the illusion of separation. As long as we perceive others as not me, we remain trapped in separation. But when we see ourselves in every glance we meet, the path home becomes clear. The last steps on earth. What the soul feels before returning home. Another essential sign of a soul completing its cycle is liberation from repetitive patterns. What once held you captive, fears, addictions, reactions, dramatic relationships, begins to gradually fall away. Not because you've become perfect, but because the internal mechanism of suffering no longer has power over you. Resentments that may have festered in the heart for years now come and go, leaving silence. The fear that paralyzed forward movement is now acknowledged, tenderly embraced, and dissolved. This is not a battle. It is healing at the deepest level. Edgar Cayce spoke of this as karmic completion, the moment when old stories no longer need to be relived because their lesson has been fully learned. Those who go through this sometimes notice that difficult situations that have previously recurred many times in life suddenly lose their power. Toxic relationships end without anger. Old pains no longer fill the space of the heart. A lightness emerges, like returning home after a long journey. As these 9 attributes begin to merge, the soul remembers itself not as an individual with problems and ambitions, but as a light that experiences, learns, loves, and is finally ready to return. But what happens next? What happens to the soul as it completes its circle? Cayce approached this topic with great caution. He emphasized, true completion cannot be described in words. It is not an exit into the void or a merging with something impersonal. It is an expansion of consciousness, not a disappearance, but a return to the original infinite state, enriched by the experience of all lives lived. The soul does not dissolve. It once again becomes part of the great flow, preserving within itself the wisdom of its journey. This state of profound unity and, at the same time, boundless individuality is a paradox that cannot be understood by the mind, but can be felt by the heart. Recognizing even some of these characteristics in yourself is no reason for pride or separation from others. On the contrary, true awakening always leads to a deeper connection with life and the people around you. The soul that completes the cycle does not flee from the world. It becomes a part of it, even more deeply, but now without fear, without attachment, without illusions. It does not impose its wisdom. It quietly shines, reminding others that the path home exists, and every soul will one day find it. Perhaps even now, reading these lines, you feel something familiar, deep, primordial, within yourself. Not new knowledge, but a memory. Remembering who you always were and who you remain is beyond all stories. And if so, perhaps you are already standing on the threshold of your final step on earth. Awakening in a dream, what life looks like on the brink of departure. There is another subtle, almost invisible characteristic of souls completing their cycle. The transition from seeking to presence. At a certain point, you stop searching for enlightenment, truth, or liberation. You realize that what you were seeking was never lost. It was always within you, in every breath, in every glance, in the very simplicity of existence. The path that once seemed endless disappears because you are already where you are meant to be. This realization comes not through philosophy or logical reasoning, but through deep inner knowing. What once seemed like a goal, to become better, to reach spiritual heights, to understand the universe, now appears as a beautiful but unnecessary dream. Because life itself, in all its everyday simplicity, is the answer. Another profound sign is a spontaneous sense of oneness with all that exists. You no longer divide the world into me and others. When you look at a tree, a flower, the face of a stranger on the street, somewhere deep in your heart, a quiet truth echoes. This is me too. And then the pain of another becomes your pain. The joy of another becomes your joy. You can no longer harm another because the other does not exist. Cayce called this state cosmic consciousness, not an achievement, but a natural stage when the soul prepares for return. Here, there is no longer pride in one's spirituality. There is no desire to be chosen, only a profound silence of love that demands nothing and excludes no one. Physical death also often emerges without fear. It no longer appears as an end. It is like another transition, like the removal of old clothes. Sometimes, in moments of profound silence, death feels almost familiar, even longed for. Not because life has lost its meaning, but because meaning is no longer limited to physical form. This is not indifference or an escape from life. On the contrary, It allows one to live each day more fully, mindfully, deeply, because there is nothing left to lose. When the fear of death disappears, a pure taste of being remains, true, open, unconditional. And finally, the most profound sign of the soul completing its earthly circle is the return home, here and now. Not in the future, not after death, but in every breath, in every heartbeat, in every glimmer of consciousness, where all that exists is accepted without struggle. You no longer seek the path. You are the path. You no longer strive to become someone. You are already who you are destined to be. And perhaps, at this very moment, reading these words, you feel this quiet peace, this serene joy that knows no reason. Perhaps you are already awakening from a dream. And then, every step, every word, every look becomes a celebration of the memory of who you truly are. And this is the greatest miracle of all worlds. Beyond the cycle, what happens after the last incarnation, when the soul completes its final earthly life? Many imagine this as a triumph or a grand transition, but reality, as described by Edgar Cayce and many other spiritual teachers, is much more subtle, quieter, and deeper. There are no fanfare, no triumphs. There is a quiet encounter with one's true essence. The soul does not disappear. It does not dissolve into an impersonal ocean of energy. It returns home, to that part of itself that has always been free, limitless, and unchanging. This state is difficult to describe in words, because words themselves belong to the world of form, whereas liberation lies beyond form. It is like awakening from a long sleep, in which you have lived hundreds of lives, experienced millions of emotions, played thousands of roles, and suddenly realized that you were always the one observing this dream. What happens after this awakening? According to Cayce, souls that complete the cycle gain freedom, not the freedom to move forward in the conventional sense, but the freedom to exist in unity with all, without losing their uniqueness. They can choose to remain in the world of form as guides for others, or to immerse themselves entirely in infinity, never to return. Some of these souls become those we intuitively sense as guardian angels, mentors, protectors. Others return again, not out of karma, not out of necessity, but as a pure act of love, to help others find their way home. Those souls who choose to remain in infinity do not lose their individuality. They retain their inner fire, but no longer need form, time, or space. They are the light that shines through all dimensions of existence. Interestingly, modern science is beginning to approach these ideas through the study of consciousness. Theories of quantum physics, the holographic universe, and multidimensional realities are gradually dismantling old notions of one-dimensional life. More and more scientists are suggesting that consciousness is not a product of the brain. It is the primary reality from which space, time, and matter are born. And it is to this primary reality that souls return after their final incarnation. But the true magic isn't what awaits us next. The true magic is that you can already touch this eternity within you. It's not somewhere far away. It's in every look, in every breath, in every silence between thoughts. Because the completion of the journey isn't about death. It's about awakening to life. A true, free, endless life that never began and never will end. If reading these lines has awakened the quiet joy or sweet peace in your heart, know this: you are not alone. Millions of souls beside you, in the visible and invisible worlds, are walking the same path of memory, awakening, and returning home. And perhaps right now you stand at the final threshold. Take your time. Don't be afraid. Everything is unfolding exactly as it should. Because the truth is not where you are going. The truth is who you are right now. If these words touched a deep place in your soul, if you felt that there's something more to life than we're used to seeing, please leave a like. Not only as a sign of support, but also as proof that the light still burns in this world. Share your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever felt this strange peace? This quiet knowledge that everything is much deeper than it seems? Write here, or leave a heart, so other seekers know they're not alone. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel. There are many more journeys into the depths of the soul ahead, many answers, and even more questions leading home. See you there, where words end and truth begins.